So what a performance at UFC Fight Night. Merab absolutely dominating Petr Yan. It was a fantastic performance. So as this fight started, Petr Yan does what Petr Yan does best. Started to get Merab on the back foot a bit with his front pressure and throwing some good strikes out there. Started measuring his range. And then Merab just starts throwing these takedowns at Petr. Obviously puts Yan on the back foot a little bit, and he was quite successful there. And then just as the round progressed, you could see Merab just implementing that little bit of more takedown pressure and started landing on his feet as well. So within the first couple of minutes of this first round, Petr Yan was really starting to be put on the back foot here. Merab was really starting to implement his game plan and started to pressure Petr. So with Petr, he's the one that's usually a relentless fighter, and he's the one that usually puts people on the back foot. But it was not the case here. So Yan comes out, tries to pressure Merab, immediately gets taken down. Now as Merab's trying to pressure him, Yan does land some good elbows within the clinch, which makes Merab second guess himself a little bit here, like hang on, I do have to be careful. As you know, Peter's a fantastic striker. The second round was much of the same, but Merab, he did start to pick up the pace a lot. He started to threaten with takedown after takedown after takedown. And you could just see midway through the second round that the look on Peter's face, he was starting to get tired. Like we never really see this from Petr, you know, but the pressure was definitely catching up to him quite early in the fight. It just seemed to me that Merab, he had endless cardio. He could go for days. He could push these takedowns non-stop all night, and that was scary to witness. And by this stage, Merab was landing really, really heavily on his feet. And Petr, midway through this fight, he was starting to swing a little bit desperately. Very tired, just starting to swing wildly, which is very uncharacteristic of him. But this is what Merab was doing to him. Petr was getting desperate. He knew he had to do something here. He was losing this fight. So Petr, midway through the fight, he did manage to catch a kick from Merab and get him down, but ultimately that success was very short-lived. Merab went straight back to work, putting the pressure on Petr, taking him down again. He was absolutely dominating the clinch, putting on a spectacular pace against Petr Yan, and it's shown in Peter's face. You know, he was starting to get bruised up quite a bit, and by the end of the fight, it was much the same. Over 5 rounds, Merab just put this pace on him that Petr couldn't keep up with. By the end of the fight, Merab attempted 49 takedowns. 49. I believe that's a record within the UFC. 11 of those landed, but even when Merab didn't land the takedowns, he was still grappling with him on the feet and dominating in the stand-up grappling battle as well, putting a lot of pressure on Petr. I've never seen him this tired. Now with Petr Yan, one of the holes that I seen within his game within this fight was his ability to defend the strikes, just the way he was defending strikes against Merab. He was putting his hands up like this quite a bit, which is a boxing style defense. But when he was doing that, he left the lower half of his body quite open to the takedowns. And every time Petr Yan put his hands up like this to defend the strikes, Merab shot him for the double or the single leg every time. And Petr just wasn't prepared for that. So he's by no means done, you know. Merab is a top contender in the Bantamweight division. Petr Yan needs to regroup and realize, okay, these are the guys at the top end of the division. This is how I got manhandled in this particular fight that wasn't really close. And how am I going to develop that so that the next time around, I'm not going to be so exposed to this? By the end of this fight, Merab had 49 takedown attempts. 49. I believe that's a new record within the UFC. 11 of those ended up landing. So not the greatest percentage. I think it was about 20%. But even when he didn't land on him, he was still grappling him on the feet, making Petr very uncomfortable. It was just fantastic to witness how the pressure just never ever let up. So Merab, obviously in my eyes, is a top contender in the Bantamweight division. Now it just begs the question, what is Merab going to do here? Because he's come out after the fight and he's just said that he's not going to be taking on Aljamain Sterling because he's his friend, and he wants to wait for Aljamain to go up to featherweight potentially. Now, I can understand him not wanting to face one of his friends, but I just think that's a bad move there. I know you don't want to fight your friends, but if he wants to be a champion and that's his goal within the organization, I think he will have to do it. So it'll be interesting to see where Merab goes from here, because on the usual trajectory, he'd be talking about a potential title fight down the line. I'm just curious as to what he thinks is going to happen. He's kind of wasting his time if he doesn't want to fight Aljamain Sterling. It's almost like he's going to be rooting against his friend, and he's going to be rooting for Henry Cejudo, because Henry Cejudo versus Aljamain Sterling is now locked in. That fight looks like it's absolutely going to happen. The UFC has confirmed it. I don't think Aljamain Sterling is going to be looking to move up anytime soon. He might do that, but at featherweight, we've got Alexander Volkanovski there, who's going to be no easy task for any man. So be interesting to see how that plays out. How do you guys think Merab went? And most importantly, what do you think is next for Petr Yan? I don't know who he faces from here, but it'll be interesting to hear your guys' takes. Obviously, the bantamweight division is quite stacked, so there's plenty of opponents for Petr Yan here. Now, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, but only if you're interested in hearing the latest UFC news, MMA news, fighter breakdowns, fight news, and event breakdowns. Thanks very much for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you next time.